Welcome to the tip channel. That is perfection.
Hello and welcome back to the tip channel. Today we're going to take a look at making sideboards for a flatbed pickup. Now, I'm not a specialist at this. I'm actually a cabinet maker. However, I do have some experience. I did one time for a client, and he wanted something special to advertise his business. So we did some sideboards for it, which really turned out nice. And I believe I did these on a Craftsman Carve-Right computer. A lot of work, but really turned out sweet. And if you're looking for insurance, you might want to give them a call. They got good rates, and more importantly, they are great people. So I've had a second friend approach me, and I've done a lot of work for him. Very good friend of mine, and he asked me to do the sideboards. Now, he doesn't want something that detailed like we did for that client. He wants it to look good, but he also wants it to be practical. So what we're going for today is looking good and practical. Anyways, we're starting out with carriage bolt, stove bolt, whatever you want to refer to it. Basically, it's a flat head. This is what we'll be seeing on the exterior of the truck. Now, I've chosen to use galvanized. Would have been nice to go stainless, but we're talking roughly 100 bolts, so would have gotten extremely expensive. But we're going to use the galvanized, but we're going to go ahead and shoot them before we actually assemble this on the truck. Which will be a lot easier to naturally do here in the spray booth. Here's the problem. You can't just grab a can of spray paint and paint galvanized. The problem is this is not going to stick. So what we need to do is, first of all, hit the heads of this with a Scotch-Brite. You can pick this up at Sherwin-Williams. And then we are going to use a Rust-Oleum primer. Now, this primer is for galvanized metal. Notice what it says, it's latex, it's not enamel. And then we will shoot it with a black latex paint. That will adhere and stay onto the galvanized. If you shoot this with enamel, it's going to peel. Now, I've chosen 2 3/4 inches for the length. The reason being is we have a stake which is 1.5 inches, and our sideboard's 1.5 inches. So that means this is going to be 1/4 inch short from coming completely through. And then we're going to use these, which are used a lot on enclosed trailers and what have you. And this is actually going to screw right onto the end of this, and there won't be any screws protruding on the inside. So give them a coat of paint as well, and naturally protect them. So I'm going to go ahead and get this scuffed, and I will push them down into this piece of styrofoam and go ahead and get the head shot on them. Now, here we are out at the truck bed, and I have a couple of different things that I need to try to figure out. Number one is, this bed is made so that the stakes are actually on the outside of the board. I don't like that. Appearance-wise, I just can't wrap my head around that. So I want my boards on the outside of the stakes. So that'll come down across, and I've seen people make a tailgate and just go straight across, even though the end of this bed is at an angle. Looks terrible. I want this to follow the angle. So I want to come down, I want to angle across, I'd like to come to the center of this bed and then have a latching mechanism to take and latch the 2 tailgates at the center. I'm going to use flag hinges on the corner so that the tailgates can be lifted off if need be. My problem is, or at least what I need to try to figure out, is I got to figure out these angles, but more importantly, what I need to do is figure out my hinges, because if I do each board at an angle, that means I would be screwing into the end grain. I don't like doing that. It's not as strong as screwing into the face grain, so I got to work that out in my head, and then we'll start looking at cutting some lumber. All right, so we calculated our angles, and basically I've used a protractor, and you can see that we are looking at 70 degrees. So 70 degrees for our cuts, we'll be making two 35-degree angles. On the back of the truck, it was a 20-degree angle, so we'll be making two 10-degree angles. Now we will be using womanized lumber. In our case, we're using 2x12s. We don't want any gaps between the boards. Again, we're going for practical. Now, these probably will shrink over time, so he may end up a little gap or something in between the two. And this will be good for a long time. Now, he may want to throw some Thompson's water sealer on it, maybe once every couple of years. But this will last him a long time. Now, to cut that, we're using a sliding miter saw. Now, it's going to pull out completely across the 2x12. If you only have a normal miter box, it would be possible to do as long as it tilts in both directions. You'd be able to cut it halfway through, turn it around, and then cut it the rest of the way through. A little cumbersome, but it will work. So we're going to go ahead and get these cut. I'm going to cut my miter first and then cut my square in, just in case I'm not real happy with the miter and I want to recut it. I'll have the opportunity to do so. At this point, I've got my miter cut and I'm cut for length. Now, because I've chosen to put the boards on the outside of the stake, these boards are actually going to be out further than what the cab is. So I don't want a blunt edge for someone to maybe bump into. So I'm going to do a 3/4 inch round over on this end of the board. So I'm using a 3 horsepower router to do that, and I won't try to do it in one sweep. I'll do several different passes. Now, when you're using your router, if you look at the top of it, it's actually rotating in a clockwise direction. So your cleanest cut is always going to be from left to right. Here's also another scenario though, is because it's rotating like this, when it comes to this end of the board, it's going to want to blow that out. So what we'll do is I'll run it backwards for a couple of inches and then I'll clean this up. Now if you're doing this to the face grain edge, that blowout can happen anywhere, just depending upon the grain. Say this has this little bit of grain right here, that router bit might grab that and blow it out. So I always go backwards first on the end grain and then come back. Sorry, on the face grain. On the end grain, like I said, it doesn't matter other than the end. So the next step is we need to drill for our stove bolts. Now, our stove bolts that we're using is 5/16. So I've went with a bit just slightly bigger. I don't want to go too much bigger because I want the square portion of the stove bolt to sink into the wood and not keep turning when I tighten up the other side. So a little bit larger. And what I've done is I've cut a piece of hardwood, 1.5 inches wide, and I've marked the center of it and I've put 3 holes in it. This way, all of my holes are going to be in a consistent location. Now I've marked the center of the stakes, so what I'm going to do is I'll take my board, line up the center of it, take my frame and square it up, and now I'm ready to drill. Now, I'm not going to drill all the way through. All I'm really doing is marking right now. Then I'll come back through and drill it all the way through. Now, for the stakes for my bed, there may be times where this truck may be setting out in the weather. And I don't want the rain and what have you just set on the top edge of this too before. So I'm going to put a 15-degree angle on the top of this just to shed any water or any snow. Now, the bottom edge of it is going to be exposed, so I think I'll take my router and hit that around the bottom as well, just to give it a little bit more of a polished look. Finally, it's starting to look like we're going to get something done. What does the farmer say? One day you dig the holes, the following you set the poles, the day after that you run the fence, and finally you get to connect. So we are ready to connect. Now I'm going to go ahead and finish drilling through for our carriage bolts that we got painted yesterday. Once I go through there, what I need to do is go on the rear side and go with a little larger drill bit for the barrel nuts. So let's get started. Here's what the sideboards look like. Here's the stove bolts that we painted yesterday, and look how nice this is in regards to the barrel nuts on the inside. We don't have any bolts sticking out for anybody to get hurt on, so nice and clean. We do have a couple of things that we will need to address. Because I decided I wanted these on the outside of the stake, we have an area on the inside that we'll need to fill in. Also, the area between the headache rack and the sideboards, will need to fill that in as well. Sideboards were pretty simple. Now we're going to start to work on the back gate, and I'm finding it a little bit challenging, but I like that. If it were easy, it would be boring. What I'm going to be using for a hinge is what's referred to as a flag hinge. And what I'm talking about is my friend will be able to pull this tailgate right off. I've changed my hinges from my original order to these. I think I've already mentioned I don't want to screw into the end grain. You're never going to get as good a hold in end grain. So I want this hinge to be on the outside like this, and I'll be screwing into the face grain, so it'll be a lot stronger. I've got a little bit of a problem though, and let me show that to you. Here I have two 2x4s cut on a 35-degree angle, the same as our tailgate. And you can see my problem. This particular hinge, the center portion of it holds the hinge out. This hinge is actually made to go inside of the miter instead of sitting on top. So I'll need to cut some of my miter off to allow room for the barrel portion of the hinge. Alright, so it looks like if I take a 1/2 inch out of my miter, it's going to allow that hinge to go in there very nicely. Our tailgates are done. Each hinge has 5 screws in each side of the hinge, or 10 per hinge, 30 screws per side. And we are screwing into the face grain, so I feel real good about that. They're working very easily, and they are a little heavy at this point, but keeping in mind that it is womanized lumber, so it will dry out and become lighter weight. In fabrication, this was a 70-degree angle. We did 235 cuts, and then we did a trim cut of about a 1/2 inch for the hinge. The degree of angle here was 20, so we have two 10-degree angles here. Fabrication, we have the 2x4s on the inside. The center 2x4 is cut on a 10-degree angle on each side. So these are working very well, and what we need to do now is to work on the catch for the center of this. The next part of the project is to make up the latching mechanism for the rear gate. Now, I looked at several different ones online. All of them was the wrong length and what have you for what I had in mind. So I purchased this from eTrailer, and they send you a pile of parts, no instructions. There is a video of it on their site, which isn't a very good video, and you have to weld it. Now, if you have to weld something, why would you put a zinc coating on it? Now, it does not come with a black steel pipe. You have to purchase that. That's a 3/4 inch black steel. Can I weld this? Sure. But it's not going to be pretty. We got all of our pieces yesterday welded up for the locking mechanism on the rear gate. Everything's all painted. We're ready to assemble at this point. Now our main locking mechanism is going to go on the right-hand side. And then the pieces that it locks into, there'll be 2 on the left-hand gate and then 1 on the truck body itself. I decided to add a little bit of pizzazz to the truck. And what I've done here is I have a piece of 1/4 inch white melamine that I've cut a pattern out on. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my router and route this pattern on. Now, to create this, what I'm actually using is what's referred to as a plunge cut router. First of all, you'll notice the brass bushing. That's going to ride on the 1/4 inch material. Being a plunge cut, the nice thing about these is that it has this adjustable cam. So I can take like a 1/2 inch, adjust the cam, go down another half, adjust the cam, and so forth and so on, so that I'm not trying to hog out the entire thing at one time. So what we did here was fill in the area where the headache rack is at. Now the headache rack comes up and then does a 20-degree angle. So the top of this board I cut on a 20-degree angle as well, and then took our top board with the scallop and tilted it in. I think it just sort of flows with the headache rack. We did all of that by adding some 2x2s and screwing from the inside so that we didn't see a whole bunch of screws on the outside of the unit. And then we took and filled in down at the bottom. I got that on a 45-degree angle so nothing will lay on it. And this inside, I'd say, is pretty much finished up. All right, time to put this project to bed. To bed, get it? Never mind. Anyways, to recap, we used the carriage bolts 2 3/4. We used the barrel nuts on the inside so that nothing was sticking out. We had a 35-degree angle here and a 20-degree angle here. We made the tailgate fit the angles of the bed. We used the flag hinges on the corner so that the tailgate can be lifted off. Split the tailgate in the middle and added a latching mechanism, which I'm still not real crazy about, but it does work. At this point, we got about 25 hours involved, and yeah, the little scallop was only half an hour to do those. So about 25 hours, and we are finished. I hope my friend likes it, and I thank you so much for watching. I hope that you did enjoy the video, and if you did, please like and subscribe. How'd the project turn out? It's the Tip Channel. That is perfection.